5:19, candle lighting, 5:35 is Mincha.
5:35.
Yeah. Okay, Torah Or, Pashas Terumah, page Pei, second column, 10 lines past midway, or 8 lines, whatever. Okay, so the Alter Rebbe is speaking about bringing Elokus down through Torah mitzvahs, that's the bread that keeps Hashem in the world. Then the pasuk says, "Emtsoacha b'chutz," even those that are outside, meaning people that can't sit and learn Torah, they also nurse from the mother through Daled Amos Shel Halacha. And then the Alter Rebbe started explaining how is it possible. So he says we find the expression of kinyan, acquisition. You give money, you get the object. So first he says, how can you say Shabbos is called the seventh day when there's tens of thousands of days since the beginning of creation? So the Alter Rebbe started explaining this. The 6 days of the week are the 6 days, the way Hashem goes into the world. On Shabbos, Hashem rests, meaning then what is resting, the powers go back to where their source was, and then they become rejuvenated, so to speak. On Shabbos, the world is elevated to a state higher than world, like we said, not speech anymore, but thought. And that's why you say, Keinesh Shemayim V'Aretz. Okay, so we're over here. Gehinei Aliyas Elam is b'Shabbos, the elevation of the world on Shabbos. V'chol Mashen is bar b'Sheshes Me'amaisa, and everything that was refined in the 6 days of creation, Eila Lichol L'mayla b'Shabbos, becomes elevated on Shabbos. By the way, which explains another strange Gemara. The Gemara says a statement which is without the Gemara I know it too. The Gemara says, Misha Torach B'Erev Shabbos Seichel B'Shabbos. If somebody cooks, basically simply the Gemara says, if you cook on Friday, you'll have what to eat on Shabbos. I mean, good morning. Without the Gemara, I wouldn't know that. I mean, unless you buy takeout. But what does it mean, Misha Torach B'Erev Shabbos? So according to Chassidic, he's explained this concept. Shetorach B'Erev Shabbos means the Aved of the 6 days of the week. A person who elevates the Birurim, so then Yeichel b'Shabbos will be able to eat, meaning there'll be a revelation of Shabbos properly. Because the whole Shabbos is elevating everything you did during the week becomes elevated on Shabbos. So the more you do during the week in Aveda of refining the world, so then more is elevated on Shabbos. And he says, Zeh k'moshel ha'kinyan, like acquiring something. Shalakech noisin tchila kesel la'meicher. The buyer gives money to the seller. By days, it becomes acquired to his possession, from the seller to the buyer. Same thing through elevating the 6 midas. In the 6 days of creation, Levad needs to refine the world. It becomes the elevation of Shabbos. Mitura the Pruda, from mountains of separation to Yechidah Shalel. By the way, this is where we left off yesterday, because we were talking about Rabbi Kiva answering how is Hashem Mechalo Shabbos, and the answer is it's all private domain. That's the concept of acquiring. What does it mean? On Shabbos, Hashem acquires the world, meaning it becomes His domain, His possession, which means instead of diversity, it becomes Yechidah Shalom, becomes the one Hashem. This is also the concept of Golus, of Mitzrayim and Bavel, all the others. What's the purpose of Golus? To elevate the sparks that fell into the world of the Goyish countries, Rabbi Kiva, Rabbi Meir, Evadia, all the other levels of converts. In other words, the Gemara says another expression, another strange expression. The Gemara says the whole reason of Golus is to add more converts. The whole purpose of Golus, laharbis lahem geidim, to make more converts. Now we know l'chayr that's against halacha, because against halacha we're not interested in converting people. If they're born a goy, let them stay a goy. That's what Hashem made him to be. So it says, so why the Gemara says the whole purpose of Golus is to add the geidim. So Chassidus explains what the Alter Rebbe says over here. There are sparks of Kedusha all over the world. If all the Yidden would be in Eretz Yisrael, how would the sparks of Kedusha in Europe North America, South America, Asia, how would all those sparks become elevated? They wouldn't. In Eretz Yisrael, the Aveda would indirectly elevate the sparks around the world. But how are they elevating the sparks? There's sparks of Kedusha all over the world because Hashem is making the world exist all over the world. So Chassidus explain what's the word. That's what the Gemara says. So Gedim doesn't mean converts. It means, Gedim means the sparks of Kedusha that are lost in the nations of the world, even the Shamas, like he says. Rabbi Kiva came from converts, Rabbi Meir came from convert, Ovadia was a convert. So, in other words, these people are the neshamas of the Gedim, that the purpose of Galus is to elevate those sparks. Well, that's what it says in Krishma. Right? What does the pasuk say? If you listen to Hashem, Shemaya Tishmu, Nasatim Tarartachem, I'll give the rain, and you gather your grain. What does that mean in the spiritual level? Gather the grain. So the Alter Rebbe says there are sparks of Kedusha out there. And you're going to gather them, meaning elevated them, to bring them to the level of Echad, gather them from diversity to one. So he says this is where the Balabatim come into play. The Balabatim are out there, and the business people are out there in the world. So they're actually elevating the sparks of Kedusha that are out there in the business world versus Yeshigolim, people that sit and learn a whole day. They're not out there in the world elevating the sparks. Therefore, the Alter Rebbe says that's what the pasuk says. Even those people that are out there still are able to elevate sparks of Kedusha.
What does it mean that a regime forces the Jews out of the country?
That means the sparks were completed already. There are many in New York. Okay, the Rebbe stopped it through screaming about people moving out of Crown Heights. By the way, those talks of the Rebbe stopped people from moving out of Borough Park and all the other places. People saw that where you're running to. But anyway, Julie, like in New York, there was Bronzeville, there was, or even here, Boyle Heights, there were mamish, frum. They called Brownsville the Jerusalem of America. It was some mamish from place. So what happened? Then it became very colorful. Colorful people moved in there. So what happened? Spiritually speaking, all the sparks of Kedusha were elevated there. There's nothing more for the Jews to do, so they move out. Now those neighborhoods, interesting, all those neighborhoods are becoming back because more sparks of Kedusha came there. That's why it says, the Rambam writes about living in Egypt. You're not allowed to live in Egypt. If you have business, you could go. So Chassidus explains, why is it forbidden to live in Egypt? Because the Jews that left Egypt, they elevated the Erev Rab, the Torah in two sparks, right? They're all elevated. If all the sparks of Egypt are elevated, so then what's the Aved? There's no purpose of a Jew being there. So it's forbidden for a Jew to be there because a Jew has a different place to elevate sparks. Those sparks are elevated. Nevertheless, for business you're allowed to. Why? Because different sparks come from different places. So for business, temporarily, you have sparks there to elevate. But then through this, I'm sorry, I skipped a line. The founder says, to support his family, which seeming is a descent. It's not learning and davening, it's business.
How did Rambam went to Egypt?
And
he lived there.
He lived there, so all the commentators in the halacha that you're not allowed to live in Egypt, in Ochos Malachim, close to the end of the Rambam. So all the commentaries ask how he lived there. So they say he was forced. The government forced him to be there. Not only that, Radvaz, there are many tzaddikim that were in Egypt, so the answer is they were forced to be there by the government. The government actually forced the Rambam to be there as the doctor of the Sultan. He had no choice. But the Rambam, what was he, right? I think he used to sign his name, the Rambam, Moshe ben Maimon, who transgresses, what do you say, 6 negative commandments a day. Because there's like, but not going back to Egypt. I remember 4, so I remember. He would sometimes sign his name, who transgressed. But he was forced to, so he wasn't... Then, what happens? The business person is out there in business. He makes a living. He buys food, eats the food to live like a Jew. That means that eating that he elevates, the Shem Shemaim, elevates all the sparks of Kedusha that he was doing in the business world. So even outside is that elevation. Therefore, tefillah oila tamid. Therefore, davening is called oila tamid, right? Karbanis, it says eilas tamid. We say every day in davening, right? A constant, a daily oila. But karbanis, davening is instead of carbon, right? So it says, what's carbon? What's davening? Eilas tamid, a constant aliyah of all the sparks of kedusha. And all the weekday davenings, misalim betfilah Shabbos, become elevated on Shabbos. Because again, what's the whole union of Shabbos elevates the weekday. So in other words, like this, based on what others says in other places. Where is there a daily Shabbos? Davening, it says, is the daily Shabbos. But it's still a weekday davening. So the weekday davening, just like everything of the weekday is elevated in Shabbos, Shabbos elevates all the davening of the weekday. That's what the pasuk says. That even business people, Yimtza'ehu will find him, find Hashem b'chutz. Given Shaydayas came through their business. Misalim anitzutzim. Be'echad, they elevate all the sparks of the world to Hashem. B'chol Yisrael mekaimim zeh. And all the Eden fulfill this. Din the Gemara. What's the din in the halacha? Parsha Rishena the Krishma tzricha lekavana. Like the Gemara says, the first paragraph of Shema needs kavana. All divrei according to all opinions, which is the halacha. Pasuk Rishon tzarich kavana. It says when you daven and you say Shema, mandatory kavana to know what you're saying is the first pasuk of Shema. One opinion the Gemara says the whole first paragraph of Shema. And the first baracha of Shemon Esrei. Then you fulfilled your mitzvah. If somebody was thinking about who knows what, they didn't get the mitzvah Shema. They need to have kavanah for the first pasuk of Shema. So he said, what's the why? What's the inyan of the first pasuk of Shema? Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad is elevating the world to Echad. That means Echad is Eined Mulvade. There's nobody but Hashem. Every Jew potentially has this ability of Mesiras Nefesh, even though actual Mesiras Nefesh doesn't necessarily have, but Yesh by Mesiras Nefesh b'koyach. Potentially, and he quotes for Dalton Rebbe says in Tanya, I feel kal shebekalim. Even the lowest of the lowest, who sins a lot, when push comes to shove, bow down to an idol or else I'll kill you. He's Meiser Nefesh. Therefore he says, even through potential Mesiras Nefesh, you elevate everything you do to Kedusha. Like it's similar to the concept of Hashem acquires heaven and earth. What does it mean Hashem acquires heaven and earth? That heaven and earth, meaning spiritual, physical, all becomes Kain. Hashem acquires it. That means the diversity and pluralism and this of world becomes his, becomes a private domain. Okay, top of the page of 160. How does it get to Parshas Terumah? Because he was speaking the whole time about the Cherubim. The brother facing each other, so that's the way. Then he went into post Beis Hamikdash. He said, then we don't have that anymore, so that's what we have. We still ask, why can't it be like a brother? And then he went into the whole of it. Which is the level of Nishikin, the level of a kiss. which is dapkes rucha berucha, which is connecting spirit to spirit. Tefillah is bal asik, through the davening of a bal asik, which is a level of skafia. The advantage of light from darkness. That's why the Rebbe Rashab, it's in the Yom Yom, the Rebbe Rashab told this Chassid Eli Lebler, he said, Rebbe, I'm jealous of you. You're in the marketplace, you meet a Jew, you tell him a nice word, you tell him a dvar Torah, you stimulate, So the Rebbe said, the Rebbe Rashab said, I'm jealous of you. Because there's certain Aveda Memtzacha B'chutz that you can't do as a Yeshiva. Ashagili B'chinas Zu. Ela Eina B'chinas Nishikin. This is the level of Nishikin, meaning Kamashal Nishikin, like a marshal of a kiss. Shemachmes Eitzim A'ava. Why is the person, I don't talk about the fake kisses. Some you kiss somebody you love is because you can't express it in words. Why did you just say I love you? Because the kiss is a much deeper level of love that you can't express in words. That is what becomes revealed in a kiss. You have to skip about 15 lines in the parentheses. And then the pasuk says, Anhogacha, I will lead you. Aviacha al beis imi. Then the pasuk continues, it says, I will lead you and I'll bring you back to your mother's home. It's the mother's home. Like we learned before, that's Pchinas Torah. That's the level of Torah. Remember, Torah Shebal Peh is Avis Torah Shebiksav, Imi is Torah Shebal Peh, which is Kigam Bal Asik. Even a Bal Asik, it says, I'll bring you back to your mother's home, meaning you have to learn Torah. Which means even a Bal Asik, halachically, has an obligation to learn Torah in the morning, in the day, and the night. Even though the primary avodah is ma'aseh b'chinas kafya, is a level of action, u'b'ma'aseh tzedakah, mikol makom hamshacha tzorchi is kasedim. So l'chayda, why do they need to learn? They said they still need to learn because the hamshacha still has to go. This elevation has to go through Torah. Why? He says, right, you need thought, speech, and action. So the business is the action. But in order to come to the action, you need thought and speech. What does that mean? That's the level of the Balei Sokim. Therefore, Balei Torah, it says Yenik Shtei Imi, which is Timidi. Therefore, it says like this. By the one part, the beginning of the pasuk says, who nurses, present tense, from the mother. And now the Rebbe explained before in this Maimer that the breasts of the mother refers to Torah Shebal Peh Cholov, right? But Yenik means he's constantly nursing. So about Yeshiva Olim, as it's called, Bali Torah, they're constantly getting this Cholov. But by the Bali Asokim, it says, Ki agisa b'yem alayla ksiv, u'bali asokim, sherak kfiyas itim, which is only temporary learning, then it says, and ha'agacha avicha beisimi, meaning, I'll bring you once in a while to the mother's home. Meaning, a Bal Asik has to learn Torah, not 24/7, in the morning, and the day, and at night, a little bit. That's our halachic obligation. Huh? Even Zvulun has to learn Torah. That's what it says in Halacha. Right, but he still has to learn Torah himself. Yisachar was 24/7 Torah. Zvulun was by day and by night Torah.
I thought they had a deal. You go work, you guys...
Yeah, but I'm just saying that even the people that worked had to learn Torah also a little bit. They didn't learn Torah constantly like Yisachar did. So Zvulun in business paid the people of Yisachar to learn a whole day, right? But they still halachically had to learn a little bit by day and a little bit by night. Kviyas item b'Torah, it's a din in Torah. Every person, no matter who it is, Therefore, the Gemara says Rabbi Elazar ben Kisma was extremely, extremely wealthy. He would obligate rich people up there when they came up in heaven. A rich guy comes up to Gan Eden, and he says, one of the first questions they ask him, did you learn Torah? He's going to say, no, I was too busy making money. Not talking about a rich person that gets tzedakah, does all that. So Rabbi Elazar ben Kisma is going to come and say, heaven is going to say, were you richer than Elazar ben Kisma or Rabbi Elazar ben Azai, these rich people that still learn Torah? Then another guy's going to come along and say, I was broke, I had no time to learn, I had to go run around trying to get some food. So they're going to say, Hillel, Machai Vaniyim, Hillel, there's nobody poorer than Hillel, and Hillel still learn Torah. So whatever you do, so anyway, it's clear in Shulchan that even a Baal Asik who supports Torah, also has to learn a little bit by day and a little bit by night. There's no excuse for that. So it says, and the pasuk, and it says, "Eshkachem yayin rekach, haynu hayayin misamech elokim." Yayin is a level of making simcha. The yayin of bechinas yeina shel Torah. Yayin refers to the wine of Torah, which is bina, the level of Torah Shebal Peh, and that's why it's simcha, because bina is simcha. In Hallel we say, the last three words of the first paragraph is Eima banim smecha halaluka. The mother of the children will rejoice, right? But Chassidus explains, Eima banim is bina. Eima banim means bina, bina is a level of simcha. Bina is the mother, gives birth, right? Chochmah is the father, bina is the mother that gives birth. So Eim Abanim Smecha mean the level of Eim, which is Bina, is Smecha. And that's the level of Yayin. Yayin represents understanding. Remember it says always by Simcha Beisa She'eva, water is Kabbalah soil. Wine is the level of Simcha. Because wine represents understanding. That's Torah Shebal Peh, the oral Torah you need to understand. If you just read Gemara, you don't know what you're talking about. You know, you said some nice words, but you can get a mitzvah learning Torah. If you say Torah Shebeksav, like Tanakh or Tilim, whatever, you just read it, you don't know what you're talking about. You get a mitzvah of learning Torah. And that's what Yayin is Torah Shebal Peh. But Chassidus explains, even in Torah Shebal Peh, Yayin is the secrets of Torah. Because Yayin, Yud Yud Nun, 10, 10, 50 or 70, which is the numerical value of sod, of secrets. Sod, right? Secrets. Now, why is wine called sod? Because wine is hidden in the grape, and then you squeeze it, you reveal it, out comes the wine. And then you have shemen. Shemen oil is also hidden, and then it's revealed when you squeeze it. So it says, according to Senior Chassidus, the Rabbi explains that there's two levels of secrets of Torah. There's Yayin, which is Sod, secrets of Torah, and then you have Shemen, which is floats above it's Mafafea Bakulei. It makes everything oily, but oil floats, huh? Yeah, so that's Yayin is Kabbalah, secrets of Torah, right? And then you have Chassidus, which is the Yechida, the fifth level. That's the level of Shemen. It's Tzafak al Kol Mashka. Oil floats over all liquids, means it's higher than all liquids, but yet it makes everything oily. That means it impacts all of it, everything. That's the level of Chassidus versus Kabbalah.
And the Shemen that comes down, the Zakan?
Zakan Aaron is a Yud Gimel Mitzvah, which was also higher than world. So he says, Elokim is Midas Ad Tzimtzum, because what does the pasuk say? Yayin Samach Elokim Ba'anoshim. That means, what effect does Yayin have on the level of Elokim? It doesn't say Mesameach Hashem Ba'anoshim. Samech Elokim va'anashim. That means it makes even the level of Elokim, which is world limitation, he makes it also happy. Why? Because that's Helen Vehester. Because Elokim represents concealment. When you bring in the level of Bina, like it says in the pasuk over there, he's going to give him wine to drink. It reveals the concealed level that it won't conceal anymore. So that's what the whole pasuk says. This whole pasuk of Yitan Chaka and Shirashim continues with all these things. Like he says, I'm Sacha B'chutz, and I'll give you the wine, and all that stuff. Yeah, I'll bring it to my mother's house. This is all the avodah of the Jew in the time of Golus, basically. In the time of Golus, the Eden are saying to Hashem, we're basically almost done with the Maimon, that the Jews are saying to Hashem, one more time, that the Jews are saying to Hashem, why can't in the time of Golus we can't have this relationship of the brother like the Cherubim that were bringing down Elokus? And then it continues through the Cherubim, the Aveda of the Cherubim. Now we don't have the Cherubim anymore. So now the Aveda is, like it says, Yenim Sheimi, that Al-Rama Shalalacha, what Torah accomplishes, because Torah is Milmata L'mayla, and then you bring Elokus down, just like the Cherubim was Parsik and Afayim L'mayla. The wings went up, and then they brought Kedusha down. When you learn Torah, you're going Milmata L'mayla, and then you bring Kedusha up. And he spoke the whole thing, and then he said, that's for people that learn Torah. What about the Bali Asakim? How about the business people? So that's what the pasuk says. Even if I find you outside, I'm going to bring you back to your mother's home. That means even those people that they're Avedis Abirudim, outside, nevertheless, they're going to be brought back to Beis Imi, which is Bina, which is Torah, that their Hamshach also goes through Torah. So then, when they learn Torah and they do business, so then all the sparks of Kedusha that are there outside in the business world become elevated through them through their learning and davening. That's why the Alter Rebbe says at the end of Tanya, when he speaks about davening an hour and a half and all that stuff, so he says even Balabatim that can't do it during the week, but on Shabbos there's no excuse, because they're not doing business. So they have to concentrate, he says, on davening more than people that learn and daven a whole week, because this is the only chance that they have. I can imagine. Okay. And that's what he says, that the iskafia, the advantage of learning Torah of Bali Asik over people that, he says, by them it's more breaking themselves away. Let's use the word yeshiva bachar, Bali Torah, right? So they're not Mesiras Nefesh to go away from business to go learn or to go daven. I mean, they're anyway not doing anything, a whole day they're learning, so big deal. When a Bal Asik rips himself away from business and goes to daven and to learn, so that's a much greater accomplishment. It's more Mesiras Nefesh. That's why the Gemara says you have to be extremely careful with Tefillah Mincha. Why? So the Gemara says because Eliyahu Navi was answered Mincha time. But Chassidus explained, Moses from also. Shachar is no big deal. Before you go to work, you daven. Ma'ariv, at the end of the day, you come home from work, you daven. Mincha, especially winter, smack in the middle of the day. That means, so unique the mincha is to shine, zohid, to shine with mincha, because when you break yourself away from business and you go to daven mincha, that's an accomplishment.
Wow.